No nanny had lasted more than 3 days with the Wilder twins until she arrived and did the impossible. Ethan Wilder stood in the penthouse apartment as Seattle's misty rain streaked down the windows, city lights blurring behind the glass. He had just watched the 8th caregiver leave, another well-credentialed professional, formerly endorsed by a prestigious preschool, now fleeing with panic in her eyes and suitcase wheels screeching across marble floors. The apartment fell quiet again, except for the shrieks of laughter echoing from the living room. Max and Leo, his 5-year-old twins, had just finished building a couch cushion fortress and were screaming triumphantly like victors of a grand battle. Ethan loosened his tie and sighed. Once a decorated investigative journalist, he had confronted crime lords, exposed corrupt officials, and reported from war zones, but nothing in life had prepared him for single fatherhood in the wake of grief. His wife, Anna, a beloved art teacher, had died suddenly from a brain aneurysm just 1 year ago, leaving behind an empty space Ethan still couldn't fill. Since then, he'd tried everything: therapy, structure, routines. But nothing worked. Every nanny he hired ended up driven away, outsmarted or overwhelmed by 2 grieving little boys who had learned to test everyone and trust no one. His phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. Claire Bennett, arriving in 15 minutes, last scheduled interview. Ethan stared out at fog-covered Seattle, his jaw tightening. Claire Bennett arrived exactly on time, neither early nor eager. No clicking heels, no sharply tailored suit. She wore simple jeans, an olive cardigan, and her chestnut hair was tied in a loose bun with a few gentle curls escaping to frame her face. Ethan stepped out of when he heard the chime. There she stood, not trying to impress, not clutching a resume. Just a calm smile and steady blue eyes that looked like they'd weathered storms without losing their softness. "Mr. Wilder?" she said first. "I'm Claire." Her voice was low and warm, unrushed. When they shook hands, Ethan was caught off guard by how real it felt. Not limp, not overly firm, just human and honest. "Come in," he said, leading her to the sitting area. "You're the last interview on my list." "And if I'm not the one?" Claire asked, her gaze unwavering. "Boarding school? Extended family? Giving up?" Ethan gave a dry chuckle. "You don't shy away from hard questions." "Only when I need to know whether I can actually help," she replied evenly. Claire didn't bring a resume. Instead, she reached into her bag and unfolded a single piece of paper, a handwritten contract, just 1 page. No promises of miracles, just a 6-month commitment, presence without expectation, care without conditions. "You don't have to decide today," she said. "I just want to meet the boys. Not as a candidate, but as a person. If it doesn't feel right, I'll walk away." Ethan stared at the paper, then at the woman who wasn't pitching herself, just offering quiet sincerity. And something inside him, something frozen for the past year, shifted ever so slightly. "All right," he murmured. "You will start work tomorrow. The room is at the end of the hall," he said. "From now on, it's yours." Claire arrived at 6:45 the next morning, holding a thermos of coffee and a small volley. Not too early to seem desperate, but early enough to show she meant what she said. The elevator carried her to the top floor. When the doors opened, Ethan wasn't there. Only chaos greeted her. "I don't want to wear this shirt." "Max, you took my dinosaur." "Leo, get out of the closet now." Footsteps pounded, something crashed, and Ethan's strained voice shouted down the hallway. Claire stepped in, gently closing the door behind her. She followed the noise to the kitchen, where Ethan, disheveled, shirt rumpled, was crouched by a cabinet door, coaxing Leo out, while Max overturned a chair searching for a kidnapped toy dinosaur. "You're a lifesaver," Ethan muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Max is having a meltdown. Leo's hiding. I have a video call in 40 minutes. Claire didn't speak right away. She poured coffee from her thermos into 2 mugs and handed one to him. "They're not difficult," she said softly. "They're scared." "Scared of what?" Ethan snapped. "Putting on clothes for school? Scared that when they leave for school, you won't be here when they get back." Ethan froze, coffee halfway to his mouth. "Since their mom died," Claire continued, "every goodbye feels final. They don't know if the people they love will still be here when they return. Because last time, someone didn't come back." Ethan didn't reply, but something in his eyes shifted, tightened. Claire approached the door where Leo had locked himself in. She didn't knock. She simply knelt and spoke low, like a lullaby. "Leo, it's Claire. I brought someone with me. He's got a nervous tummy, too. His name's Toby. I thought maybe you two could meet?" Silence. Then a soft click. The door creaked open. Brown eyes peeked out, landing on the small plush puppy with floppy ears in Claire's hands. "He gets tummy aches when he's worried," Claire said. "Think you could help him feel better?" Leo nodded slightly. Claire stayed seated, not moving closer. Max, hearing his brother, paused mid-rant and quietly crept closer. "I'll go to school if Toby goes," Leo whispered. "And if Claire is still here when we come back," Max added firmly. Claire looked at Ethan. "Can you help them believe that?" He nodded slowly. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time in the chaos of the morning, a stillness settled, enough for 2 small hearts to catch their breath. That morning, for the first time, Max and Leo dressed for school without a fight. No tears, no yelling, just Claire's simple promise, "I'll be here when you come back." And the quiet nod from Leo, the soft exhale from Max, it was enough. As the front door shut behind them, Ethan lingered in the hallway, stunned. "How did you do that?" he asked. "I didn't," Claire replied. "I just stayed." 3 days passed, then 4, then a week. Claire remained, morning after morning, evening after evening, as if leaving had never been an option. She didn't try to be their new mother. She didn't pretend that what was lost could be replaced. Claire simply showed up. She built Lego towers with Max, but let him choose how high. She read books with Leo, pausing whenever he needed space to understand. When they asked about their mom, she didn't change the subject. She told the truth in the gentlest words. "Your mom loved you so much, and love like that doesn't disappear just because she's gone." On a rainy Saturday afternoon, Ethan returned from the store to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. Claire was baking cookies, flour on her sleeves, hair falling loose, the smell of butter warm in the air. Max sifted flour beside her, and Leo arranged dough into crescent moons. "She said crescent moons are just making room for something new," Leo explained, softly but sure. Ethan paused in the doorway, watching a scene he thought he'd never witness again. Laughter, warmth, the smell of something baking as if it had always belonged. Claire didn't build trust with grand gestures or bribes. She didn't try to win Max and Leo over with flashy games or fairy tale promises. Instead, she started with the simplest thing. She stayed. She sat beside their cushioned fortress on the living room floor. She didn't insert herself or make new rules. She just asked softly, "What was the hero's name from yesterday's story?" Leo glanced at her, then quietly answered, "Finn." Claire nodded. "Do you think Finn made it in time to rescue the bear?" And just like that, the afternoon slipped into their world. Claire didn't lead. She followed, not to fix, but to walk beside them. At dinner, she didn't force vegetables. Instead, she told a story about how I used to be scared of broccoli as a kid, and whispered, "A little cheese makes it less terrifying." Max tried one bite, face scrunched, but didn't spit it out. Leo quietly finished his portion without a word. That night, as Ethan watched his sons eat without being coaxed, he turned to Claire. "What are you doing?" Claire smiled. I'm letting them feel safe on their own terms. She read bedtime stories. One book each night, sometimes the same one if they asked. She never rushed, never skipped pages. When Leo once asked quietly, "Have you ever known someone who didn't come back?" Claire simply replied, "Yes, and I think about them every day." Leo said nothing else, but later that evening he gently draped his blanket over Claire's legs as she sat reading nearby. Max tested her differently. Forgot his lunchbox. Accidentally spilled milk. But Claire didn't scold. She handed him a towel, helped clean the mess, and said, "Accidents happen. We deal with them together." Bit by bit, Max's challenges softened, and Leo's silences became less heavy. A week later, while getting ready for school, Max blurted, "Claire, I dreamed you made shark-shaped pancakes." "Sharks?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "That's ambitious, but I can try." "How about Sunday?" Max asked, eyes uncertain but hopeful. "Sunday," Claire agreed, "unless you change your mind." Leo chimed in, "He won't." And in that moment, no promises were made, no tears, just a quiet invitation. Please stay. A week later, on a rainy Thursday night in Seattle, Ethan had just finished a late video call when he heard urgent knocking on his office door. It was Max. His face was flushed, sweat clinging to his forehead. "Leo, he's hot. He called for Claire." Not Dad, not someone. He asked for Claire. Ethan followed Max in a rush to the bedroom. Leo was curled under the blanket, his forehead burning. He whimpered, eyes barely open. Claire, who had been quietly reading in the living room, was already at his side, as if she'd felt him call for her before the words were spoken. She knelt beside him, one hand resting on his forehead, the other gently rubbing his back. No frantic questions, no panic, just presence. Steady, calm, unwavering. "Can you hear me, Leo?" Claire asked, her voice like a lullaby. "I'm right here." Leo gave the faintest nod. A single tear slid down his temple, not from fear, but from relief. Ethan paused at the door, watching. He had once believed no one could enter the guarded world his sons had built around their grief. But Claire had entered without asking, simply by listening, day by day, breath by breath. When the pediatrician arrived, Claire stayed by Leo's side, softly patting his back. After the fever broke, Leo fell asleep in her arms, still clutching Toby, the plush puppy. Max, watching from the doorway, turned to Ethan. "I think Claire is a real person, not someone who leaves." Ethan didn't respond. The words echoed inside him, truth not only from Max, but from himself. No one had to say it. No one had to ask. After the doctor left and Leo's fever began to ease, Claire remained there by the bed, as if she were an irreplaceable part of the boy's world. Ethan quietly fetched an extra blanket and a pillow, placing them on the edge of the opposite bed. He didn't dare disturb the peace that now filled the room, a space softened by steady breathing, the gentle glow of a nightlight, and a quiet love that lingered in the air. Claire lay down, her eyes never leaving the two boys. Max turned first, shifting closer, resting his head on her arm. A moment later, Leo, still hazy in his dreams, also stirred, nestling his cheek against her chest, clutching her as if afraid he might wake up again and find her gone. Then, very softly, like a whisper floating through layers of blankets, "Don't go, Miss Claire." She didn't answer. She simply held them both tighter, burying her face in their soft, child-scented hair. Her heart felt as if it might burst, not from pain, but from something deeper. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged. No conditions, no promises, just belonged. Standing at the door, Ethan silently watched, like witnessing a painting he never imagined he'd get to see. In that moment, he understood. Claire hadn't just entered this house. She had entered their hearts, without even knocking. As he turned away, his hand tightening around the doorknob, Claire lifted her head and whispered just loud enough for him to hear. "Thank you for letting me stay." Ethan turned back, his voice hoarse. "No, Claire, I should be the one thanking you for staying, for choosing to stay." After the night of Leo's fever, nothing was said between Ethan and Claire, but everything had shifted. The next morning, when Ethan brewed coffee, he poured 2 cups instead of 1. Claire accepted hers without asking. For the first time, they stood side by side in the kitchen as if they'd done it 100 times before. No awkwardness, no formality, just a quiet familiarity settling in. She toasted bread for Max, folded laundry with Leo, helped Ethan revise the layout for an article he'd been stuck on. They didn't talk about what came next, because somewhere, silently, they both knew this wasn't temporary anymore. Max began calling her Claire Mom in his sleep. Leo drew a picture of 4 figures standing in the rain: Dad, Max, Leo, and a woman in an olive green sweater. Claire pinned it to the fridge, heart fluttering when she saw the word family scrawled above it in wobbly handwriting. Ethan started noticing small things. Claire peeled apples for Leo in a single spiral, just like Anna used to. She remembered Max preferred the left side of the table so he could see the little maple tree outside. No one told Claire these details. She just remembered, and somehow that meant more than words. One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Ethan brought Claire a mug of peppermint tea. "You're always here," he said quietly, "even when no one asks." "Why?" Claire smiled, her gaze dropping. "Because some people shouldn't have to beg to be allowed to stay." Ethan said nothing, not because he had nothing to say, but because there was too much he wasn't ready to admit. But as Claire stood to fold the sofa blanket, Ethan gently reached for her hand. "Claire," he murmured, "I'm really grateful you came." And in the soft amber light of the living room, there were no declarations, no grand gestures, just the undeniable truth. They were no longer strangers. It started with a photo. On Monday morning, Claire was flipping shark-shaped pancakes, just as she'd promised, when Ethan received a call from a media friend. "You need to see this article, now." Seattle Pulse, an infamous tabloid site, had just published an exclusive feature. From Nanny to heiress, Claire Bennett spotted living in Ethan Wilder's $1 million penthouse. The article unearthed Claire's past, her years as a school teacher, her abrupt departure after an unclear incident, and paired it with a series of intrusive, candid shots. Claire shopping for medicine with Ethan, Claire watching over Leo as he napped on the couch with a cold towel on his forehead, and one of her entering the building with a resident key card. The comments came fast and brutal. Classic nanny-to-wife pipeline. No formal childcare training, but living with 2 kids? She's exploiting their grief, obviously. Claire discovered the article mid-cleanup. She stood frozen, phone in hand, breath shallow. The screen glowed with an image of her in this very kitchen, but twisted into a narrative she didn't recognize. Ethan walked in and knew instantly she'd seen it. "I'll contact legal," he said. "They won't get away with this." Claire didn't speak right away. Then softly, "I'm not afraid of them, Ethan. I'm afraid the boys will hear someone say, 'The woman you trusted was lying.'" That evening, the school called. Due to community concern, Claire was suspended from school pickups until further notice. Max asked why Claire didn't walk with them. Leo didn't ask. He just watched silently. That night, Claire sat outside on the balcony while the rain tapped cold against the railing. Ethan brought her tea but said nothing. They sat in silence, sharing the weight of what was breaking. The next morning, Claire quietly packed. While the boys still slept, she placed 2 new plush toys on their pillows, one wearing a superhero cape, the other a detective's hat. She left a note with each. "I'm not leaving you, But sometimes grown-ups step back to protect what they love most. If your heart still have space for me, I'll find my way back. Ethan stopped her at the door. You can't just walk out like this. You know I don't have a real choice, she replied, eyes downcast. We fight together, Ethan said, voice low but firm. You, me, Max, and Leo. We're a family. A family in the headlines? Claire gave a quiet, pained laugh. One misread photo can shatter a child, Ethan. He said nothing. Thank you for believing in me, she whispered. But this time, I'm leaving because I love them too much not to. And with that, she stepped out. No tears, no turning back. The door closed behind her, leaving Ethan alone with all the words left unsaid. The next morning, Max asked, "Where's Claire?" Ethan clenched his fists. But before he could speak, Leo emerged from his room, hugging the new plush close. I think she still remembers us. Ethan didn't take long to find out who was behind the article. It was Vincent Hale, the CEO of a rival media conglomerate, a man Ethan had exposed in a series of investigative reports on corruption 3 years ago. Vincent didn't need to say a word. Ethan already knew. This was retaliation. That same day, Ethan called his lawyer, his public relations team, and the principal of Max and Leo's school. He was done staying silent. Claire Bennett is the only person who has brought peace to my family, Ethan said during a brief press conference in front of the old newsroom. She hasn't taken advantage of anyone. She's not pretending. She loves my children in a way no one ever has, not even me. The short speech went viral instantly. Photos of Claire baking cookies, Claire reading bedtime stories to the boys, this time circulated with a different caption. Maybe the only thing she ever took was the children's hearts. Claire watched the clip from a small cafe in the north end of the city. She had never imagined Ethan would go public like that. Her heart clenched, grateful yet afraid. She had brought trouble into their lives. Should she really go back? The answer came in 2 messages. The first was from Ethan. If you still think you're an outsider, just look at everything you've done for us. The second was a voice recording. Max's voice trembling. Claire, if you can hear this, please come home. Leo won't talk. And Toby? Toby misses you. Claire burst into tears right there in the cafe. No logic could hold back her heart now. That evening, after a soft knock, Ethan opened the door. Claire stood there, soaked in rain, eyes swollen, but shining brighter than ever. I'm not sure I should come back, she said, but I can't be anywhere else. Ethan said nothing. He simply opened the door wider. Leo ran out first, wrapping his arms around her legs. Max followed, holding out Toby, this time dressed in a tiny green scarf. We made it for Toby, Max said, so you'd remember the way back. Claire knelt down and wrapped both boys in her arms. I missed you. Every single day. The apartment seemed to exhale. The air felt lighter. The kitchen lights a little warmer. Ethan stepped closer, standing beside her, saying nothing more. That night, once Max and Leo had fallen asleep, Claire sat in the living room, cradling Toby, her eyes quietly scanning the space around her. Ethan poured some tea and sat beside her. You can stay as long as you want, he said. No contract, no need to prove anything. Claire nodded softly, her voice shaking. I don't need anything, just to be here. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they didn't belong. 6 months later, no one called Claire the nanny anymore. Not because she'd stopped doing what she did, but because the title no longer fit what they had become. She was the one who took Max to his first parent-teacher meeting without tears. The one Leo showed his first lost tooth to. The good news arrived on a quiet morning in a small hospital room bathed in soft white light. Ethan sat beside Claire, hand in hand, his breath slightly tense. She lay there, eyes fixed on the ultrasound screen where a tiny heartbeat pulsed steadily, like a gentle knock on a sacred door. "It's a baby girl," the doctor smiled. "The heartbeat is strong. All indicators are looking great." Ethan exhaled, not in shock, but as if the entire world had been holding its breath with him. Claire turned to look at him. His face wasn't lit up as she'd expected. It was calm, moved, and filled with something deeper. That evening, while Claire was reading a bedtime story to Max and Leo, the boys climbed onto her bed, as had become their habit ever since they learned about their baby sister. Max laid his head on Claire's belly, resting his cheek on the round, soft pillow, and whispered, "Can you hear me, baby sis? Do you like shark stories?" Leo said nothing. He just placed his tiny hand on her stomach. After a few seconds, he smiled gently and turned to Claire. "I think she already knows who I am." Claire smiled, brushing Leo's hair. Then Max said, very softly, as if his words could shatter something fragile, "Mommy." She froze. Her heart was pierced by something warm, not burning, but tender, overflowing. Leo echoed, "Good night, Mommy." No one had told them to say it. No one had rehearsed it. But it came, naturally, like love. And Claire understood. She didn't need adoption papers. She was already their mother, in the purest way. In the days that followed, Ethan grew quieter than usual. He watched Claire with the gaze of a man carrying a beautiful secret. He often scribbled in a notebook, checked his calendar, and whispered with Max and Leo in the kitchen. Claire began to suspect something was going on behind her back, but she never guessed it was a proposal plan crafted by a father and his two sons. Max drew the strategy map. He called it Operation Ask Mommy to Stay Forever. Leo handled the heart-shaped cookies. 1 week later, Claire returned home from a prenatal checkup, her belly now showing under a thin sweater. The apartment was dark, unusually quiet. She assumed Ethan and the boys were asleep. But when she turned on the kitchen light, the room lit up with soft golden string lights. On the dining table sat a card written in wobbly but determined handwriting. "Mommy, will you stay forever?" Claire covered her mouth. She turned and saw Leo holding Toby, Max clutching a small ring box, with a face that was both trembling and proud, and Ethan kneeling on one knee, eyes full of tender sincerity. "You've done what no one else in my life ever has," he said. "You healed wounds I was too afraid to face. You didn't replace anyone. You were just you, and that is enough." "I don't need forever promises," he continued, "but if you'll have us, let us be your family, always." Claire burst into tears, nodding faster than she could speak. "I've been yours and the boys for a long time, but hearing it still feels like a dream." They held their wedding a month later, in the small garden behind their home, where Max and Leo once played pillow fights. Now it became the place for the most peaceful moment of their lives. Claire wore a simple white dress, her hair loose. Leo scattered paper petals he'd cut out all week. Max served as the ring bearer, this time for real, and he didn't drop them. There were no distant guests, just a few close friends and the eyes of two boys watching their mother, who was now truly theirs, no signature required. When the pastor bent down and asked, "Max and Leo, do you agree to let Claire become your mom?" Max shouted, "Yes, sir." Leo gripped Claire's hand tightly. "I think baby sister agrees too." Laughter broke through tears. That night, the whole family sat together under paper lanterns. Claire placed a hand on her belly where a tiny heart was growing, wrapped in love. Ethan gently laid his hand over hers. "I used to think we had lost everything." Claire rested her head on his shoulder. "But then we found it all again, and even more." Max curled up in her lap. Leo dozed off beside Toby. 4 souls, now one family. Sonny was born on a quiet spring morning under a sky that felt unusually gentle for Seattle. The rain from the night before still clung to the hospital windows in sparkling droplets. Claire was breathless, forehead damp with sweat, but her eyes never left the tiny figure letting out her first cry in her arms. Ethan sat beside her, gripping her hand, but his heart had burst open the moment the doctor said, "A healthy baby girl. Both mother and child are doing perfectly." Claire gazed down at the little being wriggling gently, her tiny fists curled as if trying to hold on to her first taste of light. The moment felt still, as if the world paused to witness a beginning. Claire smiled, her voice trembling with joy and tears. "Hi, Sonny?" Ethan blinked. "Sonny?" Claire nodded, still staring at their daughter. "Our little ray of sunshine." He repeated the name, tasting it like a promise. "Sonny." And something inside him softened, utterly, completely. 2 days later, Max and Leo were brought into the hospital room. They froze at the doorway. "She's so small," Max whispered. "Smaller than Toby?" Leo asked. Claire laughed gently and placed Sonny into Max's arms. He sat upright, hands trembling, but pride shining in his eyes. "Hi, Sonny," he said. "I'm Max. You're gonna love sharks. Trust me." Leo stepped forward, carefully laying a tiny cloth over his baby sister. "She's cold. This is the blanket she used when she was in Mommy's tummy." Claire and Ethan exchanged a glance. No words, just a shared understanding born from loss, from healing, from love. A few quiet weeks passed, filled with lullabies, late-night feedings, and sleepy smiles. Then, one golden afternoon, the whole family gathered in the backyard, the very place where they'd once promised forever. The sky was open, sunlight threading through leaves, turning Sonny's hair to golden silk. Claire sat on the bench, cradling Sonny in her arms. The baby slept peacefully, her little fingers gripping her mother's shirt like the wind might carry her away. Ethan sat beside them, arm wrapped gently around Claire. Max and Leo ran circles through the yard, tossing the paper planes they'd made together that morning. "I used to think we'd lost the best part of life," Claire whispered. "And then Sonny came," Ethan said, "and you brought the best part back." They said nothing more. They didn't need to, for in that single afternoon, wrapped in sun, wind, and laughter, it was clear. Their story wasn't about what they had lost, but everything they had found. And the world, finally, felt whole again. Not everyone who walks into your life stays. But sometimes, the ones who come later are the ones who never leave. Claire didn't arrive to replace anyone. She came to love in her own quiet, steady, and wholehearted way. She made no grand promises, but she gave everything. She didn't try to impress. She simply showed up. Not with miracles, but with moments, with presence, with patience, with care. To Max, Leo, Ethan, and baby Sonny. Claire wasn't just the nanny. She became home. She became their calm, their light, their family, because sometimes a stranger becomes the one who redefines what home truly means. Love doesn't need to be perfect, it only needs to be real. And family isn't always about blood. It's about who stays, who listens, who chooses not to walk away. The story of Claire and the Wilder family isn't a fairy tale. It's real, but it's the kind of real we all hope for. The kind where someone, one day, simply chooses to stay. If this story warmed your heart, even just a little, please like, share, and help someone else feel a little less alone today. And if you'd like more heartwarming, soul-deep stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. There's more where this came from.